I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
We're exporting a whole lot of really bad and dangerous rhetoric, bad research, and unfortunately it's being picked up and amplified in other countries.
It's the same battle, Mr. Myers. We've been at it before. They want to addict these kids, this time to an e-cigarette, which has a chemical that's addictive. We know what it leads to. Sadly, it leads to tobacco addiction, disease, and death.
I'm going to get you addicted to nicotine. I have a customer for life. We have hundreds of cases nationwide where people have gotten sick or died using these devices.
Look what they're trying to do. All the delicious flavors of e-cigarettes are poison.
They're not people giving up smoking. They're not people that ever smoked before. Most people that vape never smoked before. Just think if your kid was doing this and winds up with an IQ 10 or 15 points lower than he or she would have had for the rest of her life.
Most people who vape are current or former smokers. For the addicted adult smoker who switches, there's going to likely be a reduction in risk.
There's a tremendous push to bring about prohibition, to actually prohibit vaping. Whereas the evidence strongly suggests that actually, up to now, the most successful way of people stopping smoking cigarettes is vaping.
Yeah. When vaping increases, smoking decreases.
That's right.
When vaping is restricted, smoking increases.
We're worried that, in fact, a lot of members of the public still think that using an e-cigarette is as harmful as smoking a cigarette. I mean, I have said that it would be tragic if smokers didn't quit and carried on smoking because they haven't tried an e-cigarette, because they're worried about the safety of an e-cigarette.
The most disheartening thing is still the anti-choice rhetoric, the desire to enforce this quit or die mentality and refuse to allow individuals to reduce their risk unless they're willing to give up everything.
I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
Well, hello, and welcome to Son of Liberty Radio. It's Friday, so we're doing our normal Friday thing. I'm glad that we've been able to bring some of the I'm going to be proud and say some of the best guests in vaping media that have been on. We go all the way back to Dr. Marwa Glover. We've had the guys from Five Ponds. We've had Demetrius. We've had Phil. We've had Samrat Chowdhury from Inco. We've had Henage. We've just tons and tons of great guests, and we've got a really awesome guest tonight who is going to blow our minds with science and with her passion for research and making sure that these people that are supposed to be protecting us, these public health and name only people, are called out for their lies and misinformation. But we'll get to her. Kevin is here, and Kevin was, almost late, like normal. So I'm just come to expect. I've come to expect that. I see Nancy Lucas has dropped by in the chat room. We need to get her on the show at some point too. Because she's the boss as well. But let's bring in Kevin because Kevin needs to speak before he can't speak anymore. Data, research, science. He's talking and he's muted. See, this is already unprofessional, Kevin.
I said, I'm already looking forward to tonight's show, and data, research, and science is important. And you've given us quite a list of guests lately. For a couple chuckleheads, we're doing all right. But I do have one complaint. I want to bring up, and he tagged you, but Alan said that I should shame you because they start at 3 a.m. and that's not good. So,
well, our guest in 2 weeks is in Norway, and he's agreed to come on the show, even though it's going to be like 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. where he's at. So, I hate to do this, but yeah, I mean, I work for a living, and I have a day job, and this is when it's best for me. And it is really all about my edification and enjoyment. So it's 4 p.m. David Moyle says it's 4 p.m. in Z in New Zealand, or Auckland. Auckland. Troop is here. I see there's people. Bill is in the chat room, and Rob is over on YouTube, and there's a couple people watching on Twitter, but it doesn't really tell me who they are. So if you're watching on Twitter, say hello. William Sanchez. Hello, William Sanchez. So let's discuss this idea that there are scientists that are doing the science and saying the truth. I know this is really weird for us because we're surrounded by scientists that have agendas and they really don't speak the truth. So our guest is going to be here to be an example to other scientists on how you should be a scientist, how you should be able to do the research, do the science, do the experimentation, whatever, and say the truth, speak the truth. So anyway, Kevin, I'm gonna say this name incorrectly because I've said it correctly before, and always when I'm in a hurry, I say it incorrectly, and it's embarrassing. But our guest, her name is Eliana Golberstein Rubashkyn. And she's we're just gonna call her Eliana from now on, I think. But we did correctly say her name at least once during the show, so we're not as chuckleheady as all of that. So let's welcome Eliana to the stream. Yes. Hello, Eliana.
Yes.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So, Eliana, Nancy's giving me a phonetic example in the chat room on how to say your name correctly. And she did say, can we please... Actually, I transposed where she included the word, can we stop the political BS, please? We've never perpetuated political BS on here. We only perpetuate the truth. And Nancy did say that I said your name correctly.
Yeah, no, Nancy. Hola, Nancy, ¿cómo estás? With Nancy, we speak in Spanish because Nancy, she speaks Spanish too, So, yeah, Nancy, I love you. How's everything going? Yeah, so you spell my name right and you say it right. A lot of people struggle to say Eliana, but it's just Eliana as is you pronounce it with the Latin language, because Eliana, my origin name, or how I originated from Colombia. I'm Colombian with mixed origins, so I'm not just Colombian, but right now I call myself a New Zealander. So I'm just I have a complex identity.
Well,
that's
what we typically just promote humanity. It doesn't matter where you are; you're a human.
Yeah, we're just pro-humans. That's what.
Yes, yeah, we definitely are pro-human and pro-human rights, and I am one of the people that believe that this vaping thing is not only, about money or about other things. It's also about our rights to make choices for ourselves to use a less harmful product. So we actually need to get into your story, though. So, Eliana, introduce yourself to the viewers and kind of give a little background and where you're coming from.
Yes, so I'm a chemist and also a pharmacist. I studied in Colombia, in Brazil, also in Spain. In Spain, I did molecular biology, and I studied in Taiwan public health. And I lived some time in Taiwan, China, and I'm now living here in New Zealand for almost 7 years. I've been working as a pharmacist in New Zealand, and in the last approximately 2-3 years, I've been part of this world. as an insider, I would say as a pharmacist that shouldn't be in this world, because you would not find pharmacists in this world of vaping. One of the reasons why, is obviously a lot of us, a lot of pharmacists and pharmacologists and scientists in this field, they get paid by pharmaceutical companies. They wouldn't feel comfortable biting their hand that is feeding them, So I'm a rebel in my sector, because I'm actually going from one side to the other to actually expose some truths. Why I'm so interested in this world. My mom smoked for 52 years, and vaping actually was the only way that vaping actually saved my mom's life. And in vaping, smoking was something that affected my mom all her life. I'm sure that she smoked while she was pregnant with me. I'm sure that this happened, and she smoked all my life. I was a secondhand smoker probably all my whole life. I always had this stink of cigarette on me. Like even when I go to school, people were thinking that I was a smoker. Just imagine me being 10 years old and smelling like cigarettes, and people thinking that I smoke. Just because my mom was a heavy smoker. She was like a 40 to 50 or 60 cigarettes a day. And so smoking is the harms of smoking are something that I really deeply feel inside me. I would say that they are even potentially in my genes. I don't know. They're written on me. So yeah, this has affected me personally. And as a pharmacist, I decided to study chemistry. And especially when I come from Colombia and all these things and how we deal with drugs and how we understand substance and how substances are part of our lives in any way, and how our war on drugs will not necessarily work. I actually come to the realization that as humans, we are not understanding how to better deal with these, with substances. It's a matter of understanding how to better deal with substances than actually not letting people to be free and to make informed decisions and to have freedom and to respect their individuality.
We love everything that you just said.
Yes.
We touched on nicotine and how people perceive that it is addictive, that it's more addictive than heroin. And one of the things that Dr. Paul Newhouse is somebody that I've been following for a very long time. We've talked about him on the show many times. And one of the quotes that was in a piece or something that we read on the show, and I'm probably not going to say this verbatim, but was that nicotine by itself is not addictive. He says, I've been injecting nicotine into humans for 20 years, and none of them have ever come to me and asked me for their next dose. In the film, You Don't Know Nicotine, it's brought up that it's not very reinforcing, and you really have to train the mice to push the button, and B, you have to really stress them out to the point where they need to relax. They need to get that reinforcement, so then they'll hit the button if you really stress them out. But by itself, they won't do that. Charles said the other night on the show, and he had numbers, the number of times per hour the mice would hit the button for nicotine versus the number of times per hour they would hit the button for heroin or for cocaine or for some other drug. And, the rat, when they figure out that they're either going to push that button and get food or push that button and get a dose of some, drug, they're going to hit that button until they die for cocaine or heroin or something like that. But for nicotine, it's like maybe once an hour they'll, I want food. And sometimes they hit the button and get food, and sometimes they hit the button and get nicotine. So why is it that we don't have enough science on nicotine by itself? Because tend to be, up until recently, most of the science was nicotine in cigarettes. Like any study about nicotine had to be tied to smoking.
Yeah, so
nobody's been motivated to study nicotine by itself.
I wouldn't say that there is no motivation. It's just that if we start, the more we learn about nicotine is actually a problem, because the harms of nicotine, they appear to be not as bad as we were told during 60 years. And the more we start to learn about something, actually, the more we learn, potentially, the more of a positive perception we will have about nicotine. So it's better for people just to forget that we need to learn about nicotine, and actually to keep thinking that nicotine is as it is when it comes from the smoke. Okay, so it's just a convenient way of ignoring that nicotine potentially could be not that bad or that evil that we've been told for more than 60 years.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I want to say about addiction is that, addiction it's a complex word. It's not a word that one can simply just say it and not give a little bit of context. Because there are addiction. I can speak about addiction like gambling being a parameter that you can call gambling an addiction, and gambling is not a substance, or like addiction to sex, or activities that somehow we can frame them around this concept of addiction. Okay, with nicotine, we could potentially speak about addiction in a sense of biomolecularly, if we kind of like understand that potentially, some people need it, and some people have especially a brain design that every time a person consumes nicotine, that person feels a rewarding that is translated in a person being calm, and in a person feeling maybe relaxed, or in a person not feeling agitated. And because it's actually more comfortable to feel relaxed and not agitated than to feel stressed and irritated, then it is very easily to see as a spectator, as someone that is not the person itself, that person needs nicotine, therefore that person is addicted to nicotine. I can use the same logic. I can use that same logic for food, and I can use that same logic for Coca-Cola. I am a Coca-Cola addict. I love Coca-Cola so much. I love Coca-Cola in all ways and forms. And maybe I'm addict to Coca-Cola if you use a framework of understanding addiction on the sense of like an activity that you're doing because you find it very rewarding. But with nicotine, there is a complexity that comes, and it's not just that biomolecularly we are talking about the addiction of nicotine. It's that nicotine appears to be used for those who appear to be or to experience stress. And that could be a person experiencing minority stress. It could be an LGBTQI person, a Black person, Indigenous person, or someone that is dealing with lots of complexities in their lives. Women tend sometimes here in New Zealand to experience what we call a need for nicotine. And maybe that could be an indicator or a symptom that women in New Zealand maybe have challenging issues at home in sense of domestic violence, which is actually a problem here in New Zealand. And therefore, we could potentially measure that stress in nicotine being just as a way of self-medication for them to deal with complexities in life, which is domestic violence. So because there is psychosocial aspects involved in addiction that are not just biomolecular, it is very hard to use these words so lightly. We need to bring some more context to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of psychological stuff when it comes to us, when it comes to smokers and ultimately vapors. There's behavioral. I have obsessive compulsive disorder, so I have a lot of tics. Things that I do, and the rewarding fact that even today that I'm using advanced generation vaping gear, I still miss having something that I can put in my hand and twiddle like this. So like when I was a smoker, I would, I would hold it and talk and gesture. And, it's really hard to stick this in your hand and do that. But, it's one of those behaviors, people refer to it as the ritual. When you first get your pack of cigarettes, before you open it, one of the first things you do is you pack it, and then you open it, and
then you smell it.
That's the next thing is you tear the paper on the top, and you smell it before you take that first cigarette out.
I still smell my kids.
Those are addictive behaviors. Those are habits that you do.
Those are not socially acceptable.
No, you have to go stand by the curb. You have to go over there and be separated from us because you're less than human. Go over there because you're not one of us. You're one of them. I mean, humans like to do that. We like to draw lines between us and other people, and that's just one of the other things. You're different than us. You do something that we don't like. But Kevin, I want to digress a minute because we have a scientist with us, yes. and part of that being a scientist is that data research and science thing that you're holding up, and you sent me a tweet from our wonderful guest that I really want to make sure that we get this in. So we're going to get it in now because right now we're in the middle of this thing called a pandemic, and there's like a virus that's floating around, and it's making people sick, and it's a very serious thing. And our enemies, the people that want to divide us from the rest of humanity, have started this talking point recently that what we do is actually making the pandemic worse. So Eliana is a scientist, like I said, and she did the thing that scientists do. They did some science, they did some research, and they conducted a study. And I'm going to throw this Twitter thing. This Twitter thing is really it's kind of, I don't know that it's cool.
Look at that. That's all science, data, and research. Look at that.
Oh my gosh. But here, I'm going to share this thing on the screen because this is the tweet from Eliana. And she says, our new preprint is now available on, and I'm going to say this wrong, Kios. And that's probably not right, but with more with a more health professional compelling language and without the complexity of physics on our first preprint. So I'm going to click on this. It's going to open up. And this, if it catches up, it says the aerial transmission of the SARS-CoV-2 virus through environmental e-cigarette aerosol. Is it plausible? And this is Roberto Sussman, Eliana Golberstein, and Ricardo Pelosa. This is a paper written by, I recognize all three of those names, Kevin. Dr. Pelosa, I've read quite a lot of studies about vaping that has his name on it. I think Sussman has actually done a lot of science on vaping as well. But Eliana, talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, so we combine our forces because this is you need a lot of different disciplines of science to understand this aspect. So Roberto Sussman is a nuclear physicist, and so he also understands the physics of particles and all this complex flow and dynamics and architecture of the movement of flows and vaping flows and all these aspects. So that Roberto was important in that sense. Actually, he's the leading author because he helped us with all the complex physics that are involved in the architecture of the respiratory movements. And obviously, Ricardo helped us with understanding that architecture, how the lungs they produce this breathing flows. And myself, I give my input from the virus itself, the biochemical aspects that are involved in the glycols in the air and how those flows dissipate in the air, because obviously It's like a combination of physics and chemistry. So it's different ways of understanding the same process, but using two different disciplines of science, which is chemistry and physics.
I'm going to remove it from the screen because there was a visual experiment or a visual.
There is another paper. So the first paper, even though it has a little bit more complexity, it has some pictures on it that you can somehow use if you want quickly. If you can find, it is in my tweets. The first paper, which is from Med, it's not Chaos, it's MedArXiv, which is the medical preprint website. If you can find it, otherwise I can send it to you now.
Oh, I'm looking at here. I'm going to add this. Is it this one?
Is that one? Yeah, I mean, that's something that there's some screenshots from that paper. That paper has approximately 40 pages. And so in that paper there, we are explaining how the droplets and how the flow occurs, and then how those little droplets get diffuminated in the environment. And we're starting to analyze that diffusion process. We explain that, for instance, talking, right now I'm talking. Usually a person that is talking, the flows that happen from the mouth is around 20 meters per second. My flow is approximately, that's the speed. When I'm breathing, it's approximately 3 meters per second. Vaping is potentially a little bit higher than that. But if we make a risk assessment, and the risk assessment is in page 34 and page 35, after making a risk assessment, following models that are being used right now for understanding the risk of transmission for other activities such as singing, coughing, and breathing and whispering and all these activities, we identify that if vaping, if we ignore the parameters of the antibacterial properties of the glycols in our vapors, vaping might just insignificantly increase the risk by 1%. If you compare it with breathing, but talking increases the risk already by a 35 to a 50%. So it's 40. So I have 1% for vaping when compared to breathing, just breathing, and 44% for continuous speaking, in which you are speaking every 6 minutes an hour, or 90% for speaking, in which 40% of the time you are speaking, which is 20 minutes. And over 260% if you cough every 30 times per hour. Okay. Why this information is so important? Why this information is important for public health? Because in Spain, they banned vaping in few cities because they say that vaping spreads or is a vector for SARS-CoV-2. Okay, which is not true, because we have demonstrated that in our paper, that that's not necessarily true. They say that because the person removes the face mask in order to vape, so they say that that time which the person is removing the face mask, the person is increasing the risk of transmission. Okay, although we don't tell people to vape inside like a place, a closed space. If I am in the street and if I remove my face mask for a few seconds just to vape, that's not increasing my risk of transmitting the virus, because it's actually the only thing that happens with vaping. When somebody vapes, your vapor only helps people to visualize your flow, your respiratory flow. So people just see it. Just
it's
because
the same.
Yeah.
I'm not a scientist, but this is the same exact flow that everyone has when they're breathing.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
So the reason why we added at 1% and we actually took a cautionary approach to our data is because when somebody breathes, when they do MTL, and obviously DTL is another word, because in DTL the risk could be higher. When somebody do MTL, you have a bolus, like a bolus or that you extract from when you're puffing, and then you control that bolus a little bit differently, because you actually do a slight deeper breath. That's why that delicate 1% when you compare with other like activities such as just rest breathing. Okay, so with our data, we actually suggest that we shouldn't be treating differently someone drinking a coffee that requires face mask removal for a few seconds, while the person is actually drinking a coffee, let's say in a park or outside in the street. There's no difference between that activity and vaping. if you have in mind that, like, let's say a cup, or let's say this drink, it would take me maybe 200 different drinks. Like I need to drink this 30 times in a space of maybe, let's say, an hour. But we breathe 20,000 times a day, but you don't vape 20,000 times as every time you breathe, because that activity, we calculated it and we have the data and the evidence on our paper. It's approximately 100 to 170 to 180 up to 200 times a day. Okay, and we are speaking only about that activity being done in the street, because we are not telling people to vape inside a place in which you have to wear face masks all the time.
So someone yelling at me about not that I don't, but someone yelling at me and spitting in my face about not wearing a mask is more dangerous than vaping.
Yes, that is making you sick, and maybe your respiratory flow, vaping is actually maybe somehow protecting a little bit, because the propylene glycol has a little bit of antibacterial properties. So you better keep vaping, and you just forget him, and just ask him to wear his face mask, and then you will wear your face mask after you did your path. You just go back to normal and just forget about them.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of myself, Patrick. I didn't use the word Karen, not once, in that question. You're welcome.
So, I have to say something here, because obviously there's been some criticism. I actually found the criticism right on your Twitter. You're being transparent. So I'll throw it up here. So Dr. Michael Mays said he's an infectious disease and respiratory physician at Otago University, said the findings had to be treated with some caution given the author's stated involvement in the vaping industry and the fact that the paper was a preprint. Mays added there was also a lack of existing empirical evidence to underpin the findings. And then he has a BS quote here that says, "I'd be cautious about declaring there's minimal increased risk until we've seen more data from actual experiments using vaping and performed by scientists who don't have conflicts."
So ask the question.
Well,
are you in the industry?
I know the answer to that question, but are you in the industry?
Yes, I am.
And as a mother, or as a child, as a daughter, for example, I know that you're a daughter, and I know that you're a scientist. Would you ever allow your mother to use a product that you didn't research fully before you supported her choice to use that product?
No.
As a daughter who loves her mother and doesn't want her mother to die prematurely, you are obviously going to make sure that your mother makes informed decisions. So I'm kind of laughing at this because this guy apparently did no research, and B, and we brought this up earlier in our conversation before we went live. But one of the things that sort of irked me about the Australia Senate hearings was that every time a pro-vaping academic or a pro-vaping scientist spoke, one of the senators did this like as his first question for every group, or every speaker during the hearing was bring up the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control and the language in the treaty or whatever that makes everybody disclose their finances. Do you or have you ever accepted money from tobacco companies? And it seemed like they're wielding that as a weapon to discredit scientists. And obviously, we've already come across this in the past. A lot of great scientists have been maligned and their work questioned just because at some point in their professional career, they've worked for a tobacco company or a vaping company, or that they've somehow derived some income. And, Dr. Wodek, we played the video on the show twice now. I'm not going to play it again. And his response to that. But anytime I see this, and I'm pointing at the monitor with that quote still on it, it really it just makes me mad, because science is science, and you can refute science based on science, but to refute science based on who you work for or where you get your paycheck is a lot of crap, in my opinion. I'm going to try to be nice and not curse a lot while Eliana is a guest, because she's trying to be above. She's trying to be proper. Yeah, that's the word I should say. She doesn't want to. She doesn't want to come across as one of us crazy people.
Chuckleheads. There is a third part to this question, and I believe I know the answer. Did you, Eliana, at any point risk your career by not using any of those things, data, research, or science? Ever?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't. I'm risking my professional life as a pharmacist right now because I'm involved in the vaping world, and that's it. I know it's true, it's a fact. Not that I cannot be part of the pharmaceutical industry again. Actually, maybe I can, if they give me $1 million to speak bad things about vaping, maybe why not? No, I'm just kidding. But what I'm trying to say is that science, it's a complex. It's complex in this because you can use it to display whatever you want. Okay. Anyway, having a product that is at least 95% safer than smoking, if I devote my entire scientific life to be focused on that 5% and to find everything bad on that 5%, I can make a whole life with that, I can die and I can keep all my whole professional life speaking bad things about vaping, and that science will never stop. But my question is, who will be able to see the whole picture, to understand the whole picture and the implications of that picture? I'm sure that a lot of you guys, even if you are not very connected with the science, the world of science, you feel it. You kind of feel that, there is something in here, that there is a truth that hasn't been told. And obviously, as a vapor, you guys know it better than me. Before this thing of vaping, when my mom was killing herself with cigarettes, I was completely unaware of this world. But for me, it was kind of like a common sense. It's not combustion. It is vapor, is vaping, maybe pyrolysis. But I didn't, even if this is not something that impacts me personally, that affects someone I love a lot, my common sense and logic was like, vaping definitely is better. And I'm just using a brain that is conditioned with chemistry and science. So it's not like, it's my common sense, and I don't need to kind of struggle much into understanding this paradigm, because I'm sure that every single chemist, and I would say that every good chemist and every good biochemist and physicist will be able to understand vaping and say, unless the person is being conditioned in seeing things in one way. But it's kind of obvious in many ways, and sometimes I feel like I have this kind of nerve sweats when I see kind of how much misinformation happens in the world. And when people try to take things, when people take things out of proportion, or when people compare vaping with with air, or when people try to do comparisons that they shouldn't be made, because obviously if I want to make something dramatically bad, I need to find an element of comparison that is dramatically good, so I can exaggerate these responses. And journalists do that. And scientists, we get our ways to exaggerate things, because if we're being paid very well, we will exaggerate something if we find a way to do it. And you can do it in many ways. You can do it with real science, but it's up to you on how you display your data, So, and this happens a lot in this world. It's kind of gymnastical, because it's becoming harder to speak about things about this world, because with more evidence coming in, it's more hard to kind of to gymnastically exaggerate harms and to kind of portray vaping and nicotine badly. But it's gonna happen. But yeah, it's more difficult. So I would say that for those scientists in that end of the spectrum, it's not that easy as like it was maybe 5 years ago.
Right. So where we are a community that you now are in, and you see that there's a lot smarter than the two you're looking at, but we have scientists and doctors that will answer our questions quickly, and it's not a joke. So the second follow-up is, doesn't any good researcher or scientist or chemist or pharmacist in that field, when they ask themselves the question and they get the answer, don't they double check the answer, really, or have it looked at by someone else who you understand will do it correctly, ethically and correctly, is the only thing I'm looking for.
In the science world, sometimes, and this happens quite a lot, we respect authority. So if I'm a physicist and I have a world-known doctor speaking about diabetes, and he says something like, "Oh, sugar is good if you, I don't know, breathe sugar," or something very stupid, I kind of have to kind of feel that he's right, because we respect authority. So when we don't know much about something, we have that sense of like, you know what, I'm gonna trust your authority. And that happens with a lot of other scientists. They don't have the time to fact check because they might have their own agenda, or they might have their own worldview that is unrelated to this world. But for those involved in this world, actually, yes, I wonder if they know, and I wonder how they feel, and I wonder if they can sleep at night.
Right. But go ahead, Patrick.
So this is a talking point that we've brought up on the show many times. So in 2016, they did a survey of the general public, and they asked, do you think that vaping is safer than smoking? And at that point, 70% of the people that responded to that survey said, of course, vaping is safer than smoking. They repeated that same survey 2 years later in 2018, and they asked the same number of people, do you think vaping is safer than smoking? And 70% of the people that responded to the survey said, no, vaping is way worse than smoking. And this comes as a result of a systemic misinformation campaign, or the spreading in mass of bad science in headline form in every media outlet. Obviously, this is pre-EVALI lung scare, so we can't even blame EVALI or whatever we want to call it this week, because the CDC has changed the name twice. But we have these vaping-associated lung injuries. But this survey was conducted prior to that, and in every media outlet that's most people would consider to be an authority. Then you have the American Lung Association, Tobacco Free Kids, the Legacy it's not like Truth, the Truth Initiative, Johnson, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, all of these so-called public health groups with massive statements about how awful vaping is. The general public, who have no interest, need, or desire to research this topic because it doesn't impact them, just absorb those headlines, just absorb those statements, and regurgitate them. It's
I wanted to mention, for instance, I met one chemist, and he kind of understands all the concept of combustion, and how combustion is a very dirty process, and we know it as chemists. But he kind of like absorbed misinformation in the way that he was like, but I heard people are using ethylene glycol as a glycol. So this person is a clever scientist, And he also knows that ethylene glycol is not something that you should use. But he got misinformed that vaping has ethylene glycol as a substance that, for the generation.
It's antifreeze. We have antifreeze in our vaping. Didn't you know that? That's what we're vaping is antifreeze.
Yeah. Every glycol is an antifreeze, but ethylene glycol is by convention antifreeze. It's more convenient to use ethylene glycol, which is a very toxic substance. We don't put ethylene glycol in anything we use or consume. But my friend, my chemist, was conditioned to believe that vaping has ethylene glycol, not propylene glycol, which is not toxic. It's not considered toxic. Actually, if I use the general global and harmonized system to understand toxicity, you cannot call propylene glycol toxic. If you call it toxic, you need to go and fight with those who created those standards for toxicity.
And you can almost excuse them because PG is propylene glycol and PEG is polyethylene glycol, and then there's regular ethylene glycol, and all of them can be used as an antifreeze. Propylene glycol is even used as an antifreeze because it's non-toxic and it's safe because pets here in the States would get in the garage and consume Prestone antifreeze because it does have a sweet, it does have a sweet taste, and they would die. And people raised all sorts of hell here because their pets were dying.
Don't let your pets vape.
Yes.
Please
so propylene glycol is a substance that is toxic for cats and dogs because they don't have the same enzymes that our body has to process that molecule. Okay, glycerin is another thing because glycerin actually we are factories of glycerin by ourselves. Okay, we made it. We have it right now in our body. If I want to make a vape liquid from myself, I can do it. I can take a part of me and I can make BG, which is not gonna be B, it's gonna be Eliana glycerin. It would be B, and then PG would take from something. So it would be a good marketing strategy, making your own, glycerin sourced, with what yourself, because glycerin makes part of our cells. Our cells made it, our cells process it, but our cells also need it for life and for living.
Is that why they find carbon monoxide in some studies in vape? Because we produce carbon monoxide.
So right now, and it all depends, but in the ambient, we have 1 particle per million of carbon monoxide right now.
Right.
And I'm gonna show you this, guys, because I keep it with me. I have a lot of gadgets. So this is, you guys know this one, do you? Yeah. So if I do a reading right now, you will always come out with 1. You would come with how do you call it? Like, if I do a reading right now to check the carbon monoxide levels, you would say 1. And I will try with myself because I don't smoke vape, so I am a good how to call that
candidate.
Control. I'm a good control for this.
She's the control,
Control candidate. That's good enough.
Yeah, I'm a control. So I'm going to run an experiment right now.
Data, research, and science right in front of your eyes, people.
Deep breath.
Look at that.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
No other guest has ever done this.
We've never done science on the show.
No, never.
Oh, 1 part per million of CO2.
Holy
or CO.
crap.
So
You're
that means
die.
I'm gonna die. So that means that 0.79% of my hemoglobin is carboxylated, or is carboxylated with the carbon monoxide. Okay.
Well, now that sounds scary.
That 1 part per million is actually ambient carbon monoxide.
Right.
Okay. And a smoker, you can expect the smoker to have 15 to 20 up to 40 parts per million. And actually, in a vapor, you will find them also to have the same number I just had.
Well, imagine that.
And
we're normal.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that is more fascinating when you do this simple checking of carbon monoxide levels in blood, and you show a smoker like how those levels are so detrimental, because carbon monoxide is one of those first substances that immediately cause harm. You don't need to forget about cancer, forget about COPD, forget about those chronic conditions. I'm speaking about acutely. This is the first substance that immediately starts to harm you. Like, you can feel it right away, okay? Because you don't have the oxygenation in your body, because the carbon monoxide obstructs your oxygen from oxygenating your body. Okay, so that's yeah.
We actually, Bill brought it up in the chat room, but we need somebody to take one of those to a hearing and bring a vapor and bring a smoker and bring a non-user. And then in front of all of these senators, Congress people, policymakers,
bring a senator down.
Well,
and
they
a
would be
smoker and a vapor.
They would be the control. What if they're a senator that smokes though?
No, that's not my problem.
But yeah, that would be a great object lesson in the middle of a hearing. Bill, I congratulate you for having a good idea for once. Oh, that's sorry.
Yeah,
we've done science on the show.
We need to be more creative in the way we speak about this, because we've been speaking about this for quite some time and nothing happens and things get worse. Let's be more creative. Let's all of us have one of these ones and keep it with ourselves, and just go every time we see a politician, I don't know, have a smoker, which you can use as a comparison, do it in front of him, show, look, I'm not speaking BS. It is happening. I can show you right now, this is real science being made.
Yeah. And even during the last show, Dan Donahue brought up carbon monoxide, and we talked about it with Charles, and we had great ideas for new techniques and new talking points when Charles was on, because, I've been vaping since 2010 now. I've been active in advocacy and education, and that for about the last 8.5, 9 years. And we have failed to absorb new talking points, of new methods of, defending this industry and defending this technology and defending people's right to choose a safer alternative. So yeah, we have to, at this point, especially here in the States, when it comes to politics, is we have to embrace change to our message, because we have to address a completely new person in power that we haven't really ever engaged with here, at least. Politics is weird everywhere you go. Here in the States, the liberals are or thought of as anti-vaping. But then in Australia, the Liberal Party are the pro-vaping party. And in the UK, they have their own cohort of politicians that they have their own pro-vaping policy party in the UK. So, politics is one of those things that has to evolve and change based on who's in power and where you are. We need that.
Yeah, because they come all the time with these dual vaping smoking thing, which I don't think, I think when I speak about toxicity, I love the concept of dosing. If you need nicotine, let's say I need 100 milligrams of nicotine in a day. What if I take maybe 20 milligrams out of the 100 from smoking and then 80 from vaping? I'm taking 80 that are cleaner and 20 that are dirty. Yes, they are not really good, but potentially is better than having all those 100 milligrams extracted from nicotine from a cigarette. This is one point talking point. But on another hand, if you have a device that can demonstrate that you are not a dual vapor smoker, because maybe you guys are a plot for the tobacco industry to renormalize the smoking, then you guys will have another talking point. Or you say I'm a smoker, but how can you know? Actually, with this device, you can find out if somebody smoked 3 days ago. So if you are actually a person that actually just pretends to vape, and then so you normalize, you're kind of like a part of the conspiracy, and actually your intention is to normalize smoking, then actually you can have that device and you can say, if I am a smoker, then let's this machine speak the truth. And this is, so this is something that I just find fascinating. These machines cost like $1,000. They are not cheap, but potentially it's a good thing for some people to start thinking about.
Okay, we're going to start a fundraiser to raise $1,000 to buy one of those machines. So everybody chip in a quarter, and we get enough people, we'll buy one. Or go listen to the podcast because I get like 3 cents every time somebody listens to the podcast. If we get $1,000 in there, we can buy a machine. So promote the podcast. And I'm joking. But yeah, we need to figure out a way to buy one of those. And we'll anybody that wants to go to a hearing that will ship it back to or ship it to the next person. We just round robin the device. Okay, you have a hearing in 3 days. I'll send it to you.
You need to just be aware of coronavirus, the SARS-CoV-2, because you don't want to mass spread the virus. So we are just in the wrong timing right now because we are in the middle of a pandemic, and and you have to use the mouthpiece to
Can we buy extra mouthpieces? We can just buy extra mouthpieces.
Yeah, this one comes in 200. They give you 200, and you can do whatever you want with 200. And each person has their own thing, and you can disinfect each time that happens. Yeah. And,
I wonder if you
could get an autoclave, and we'll just autoclave it between each one.
Maybe we could rent them.
You want to rent the mouthpieces?
No, the machine.
Oh, okay.
That's an important machine.
No, Troop, we're not doing that. Troop says that I should auction off one of my one of a kind House of Hybrids devices.
2. We'll get 2, Troop.
Oh no! If I've got a hand engraved one that's worth in my mind about $10,000.
Well,
so we can buy 10. We can buy 10.
Good, Patrick. Thank you very kindly from all of us.
But only if we could get $10,000.
Yeah.
I want a guaranteed check for $10,000 before I make that offer. But yeah, so I did notice that you had shared on Twitter a couple bits of science.
Yeah, I struggle a little bit. I will apologize publicly if people are. I struggle sometimes with. I'm dyslexic a little bit, and English is not my language. I speak few other languages, and my brain sometimes struggles into organizing sentences with subject, verb, object. So I kind of like. When I write things might not be grammatically correct in English, but that's something that it's my problem. It's my problem I have. I apologize in advance. So yeah,
we're the only ones that construct sentences the way we do.
I speak one language and I have a hard time.
I mean, especially when compared to Spanish or I took 2 years of Russian in college, and that was in 1991 and 92, and I can't even remember the full alphabet anymore. That's how stupid I am. No,
because I can't remember. SVO is subject verb object. In Spanish is SOV. In Chinese is OSV, is SVO, and in Hebrew, which is another language I speak, is you can actually change that. But English is the only language that is very strict on that order. And all the other languages I speak, it doesn't matter how you organize the words. In Chinese, you have to organize it in a way. That's true. But so that's why when I write, I kind of like, I'm thinking multiple languages, and I somehow forget that English is very strict and it doesn't allow me to be very flexible in how I write things. So some people will be like, "Oh, this sounds really odd." No, it's just because it's my way of thinking. So don't think I'm just dumb and I don't know how to write. It's just a struggle that I have.
Well, you do speak 9 languages?
Yeah.
So I don't think anybody that listens or watches or this program, I shouldn't say anybody, but I'm sure the vast majority of the audience probably only speaks 1 or 2 languages. So, my wife is from the Philippines, And every person that isn't from the Philippines speaks at least 3 languages, because they speak their regional dialect, they speak the national language, which is Tagalog, and then they speak English, because English is their official legal language. So yeah, everybody in the Philippines speaks 3 languages. So I guess that we should say that every Filipino is smarter than most Americans because they can speak 3 languages. But that would be very generalized. But I did see this study that you shared. Your name's not on this one, but this one is e-cigarettes and obstetric outcomes, a prospective observational study. And I believe Kevin sent me this one as well that he wanted to talk about. But this is one of those things that makes us cringe a little bit. I mean, obviously we've been it's been hammered into us for quite some time that smoking is bad for the fetus. And obviously smoking is bad for everyone. And we've been hesitant to promote pregnant women from vaping because
Not me.
of some, I'm being very general here, Kevin, don't interrupt me. Because of some sort of weird fear. Well, it's not weird. I mean, we want the baby to be safe, but that's one of those things that we found worrisome about, obviously if you're in the vape business, I guess you got to be very careful about what you tell people anyway. But so I found this interesting. And obviously the objective of this study is to compare the obstetric outcomes and socio-demographic factors in e-cigarette users with cigarette smokers and non-smokers during pregnancy. And this is a observational cohort study is how it's designed. I love the way that that PubMed designed this summary, because it's very, bullet pointy. It's very straightforward. Here's the objective. Here's the design. We did this in a large urban maternity hospital that delivers 8,500 infants per year. And the people that were in the population of the study are pregnant women attending antenatal care. That's post-birthing care. So one of the methods of this study is they use e-cigarette users at a time of booking history were prospectively identified. Maternal and neonatal outcomes were compared with those of pregnant smokers and non-smokers, and multiple logistic regression analysis was performed to estimate the association between the explanatory variables and birth weight. So essentially, one of the things, the reasons why they suggest or they tell pregnant women not to smoke is that babies of smokers tend to have lower birth weight or weight. And I guess that's one of the measures that they use as a health outcome, during the first several years of the baby's life, is what was their starting point. They came out, they were low weight. How did they thrive? Did they, later? But they said the results in this, a total of 218 women with exclusive e-cigarette use and 195 women with dual use had a live birth during the study period. E-cigarette users of higher socioeconomic status than smokers. So that's something that we discuss, is that smokers tend to be lower education, lower socioeconomic, that they're usually poorer and less informed than non-smokers. I mean, that's a very generalized statement, but by and large, that's the way it's come out, is that the people that have been educated since the Surgeon General's report in the 1960s, most people have been educated that smoking is bad. and it affects your health, so forth and so on. So they don't tend to, smokers tend to be regular people now. Most of your rich folks, they don't smoke anymore, or they only smoke cigars or pipes or something like that. But that's just one of the talking points of this study, is that people that vape tend to have a higher socioeconomic status than people that smoke, or at least the respondents in this survey. So Eliana,
I actually, this is something I think quite a lot, because as I mentioned you, my mom smoked when she was pregnant with me.
Yeah.
And I was a baby when she was smoking, but in any way I was exposed to nicotine. And yeah, probably I am mentally impaired, or I have a strong addiction to nicotine, as Glantz say, because Glantz is such a great scientist.
Because it does affect your intelligence. And Michael Bloomberg, even in our intro, talks about how nicotine addiction lowers your IQ by 10 or 20 points.
Yeah, so I'm definitely
if you're a genius now, you would be a super genius had your mom not smoked.
I'm at a 9 IQ.
Yeah. So I or will I be an outlier, or regardless of my mom? Yes, my mom is the heaviest smoker I ever met in my whole life, and I know that she even told me that when she was having me, she needed to ask the doctor if he was nice to her, and after she delivered me, if he allowed her to go to smoke. Okay, so that's how she was. Okay, that's the level of and that's the level of exposure that I have to nicotine. Okay, so I'm totally mentally impaired. Okay, guys. So if I speak the way I speak, is because of the nicotine. Okay, and that's a summary of everything.
Because Glantz is such a great scientist.
Yeah,
you open the door. You open the door for that conversation talking point. Obviously, we have a guy, and I'm going to digress just a moment. So during the Australian hearings where Clive was speaking, one of the people that were trying to discredit him asked his credentials. Why? What gives you the credentials or the knowledge to speak on health outcomes or health impact of vaping? What is your scientific credentials? And he gave them, and he's not a medical doctor. But they questioned the veracity of his statements based on the fact that he's not a medical doctor. But then you have a guy that is supposedly the world leading expert on tobacco control, and then ultimately on vaping, and he's literally a mechanical engineer. But no one questions his credentials. No one questions the veracity of his statements, because he's this doddering old man that's been going to hearings for 40 years, pushing a political agenda or pushing an ideological agenda, but they don't question him about his statements and the truth of his statements and the veracity and the science of his statements. And I digressed from the low birth weight study, but we'll get back to that.
Are you going to go straight to the other one with the carbon monoxide?
Yeah, exactly. Look, this guy is very smart. You're very smart. This is what I wanted to say. You say
what did you say, Kevin? I missed it.
Keep going.
Carbon monoxide. Yes. The carbon monoxide is probably the thing, which was trying to lead you into the other study that I sent you.
I'm not there yet.
I know.
Calm down.
And that's pretty much the reason. So if your baby is not oxygenated enough, because the carbon monoxide that your mom is passing through the baby, it's not oxygenated enough, the baby won't be able to grow. So the baby won't be able to oxygenate cells, and cells, oxygen is part of their mechanism of breathing. In cellular breathing, we call it cellular breathing. You need oxygen for your cells to breathe. If your cells breathe, they can become 2, and then 4, and then 8, and then 16. So that's just pure biochemistry basics. You need oxygen for that process to happen. Okay, simple. If you don't have enough oxygen, baby won't be able to grow. Therefore, it's underweight. It's so basic, but great.
So what was your? This is a private question. You should never ask a woman her weight. But what was your birth weight?
I don't remember knowing that, but I think I was underweight.
Okay.
I was definitely underweight.
Because I was 9 pounds 8 ounces and 21 inches long when I was born, and my mother was a smoker, and I think I was pretty big baby.
Yeah, I was 3,000. I was like, I was underweight, and I was 50 centimeters, and you're supposed to be over 53 or something like that. So no, I was not. I was supposed to be bigger. But then in life, I actually trying to balance that out, and I ended up being bigger as I grow. But that's my personal choice.
I mean,
you ate your veggies.
I mean, obviously,
Kevin
started smoking when he was like 6,
9.
Kevin's been using nicotine since he was 9 years old, and he's pretty smart. He's pretty smart now. Like he
just said I was, and I want the cut of that sent to me as quickly as you can tonight.
That you're not smart. You want me to edit out and make a soundbite of her saying that you're not very smart.
You can if you like.
I have audio editing software. I can make her say anything I want now.
You know that all these studies that they do that nicotine causes brain neuroworking damage or something like that. Because this is what
it hinders brain development.
Yeah, this is what a non-doctor, non-pharmacist, non-biochemist said, which is Glance, because this is what he said. If he said such a thing, but the funny thing is that if you want to definitely know that, the only studies that are showing that, and I have no idea how clean and how impartial and unbiased those studies are on rats. And rats that you just intoxicating with nicotine. I'm sure that you're just like poison them to death, to a point in which they don't die, but so you can keep going with the experiment because you kill the rat and we not have data. So, and then you actually get to see what's going on, because I've seen data, I've seen ways of making experiments, I've seen things that you guys will not be able to understand. Somebody that doesn't understand a concentration of nicotine on a puff, and they actually force cells to be exposed to concentrations that are impossible for a vapor to even resist. And they cause us, just those cells on the body are harmed just because of the high pH of nicotine. When you use really high intensity vapors exposed to naked cells that have no other systems of protection, you are just killing those cells, but not because of nicotine, because you are exposing those cells to a high pH, which I can do with caffeine. Any other substance has an innate pH, a pH, whatever. I could put lemon, I don't know. Yeah. That's pretty much more a physical effect, physical chemical effect than actual toxicity. You're inducing those effects,
So in my opinion, on the nicotine in the brain thing, the smokers and the now vapors and the snus users who all use nicotine, most of them have nicotine, there's some non, are smarter than most tobacco control experts because they don't use nicotine. That's my meta-analysis.
No, I'm actually surprised, and I would like to share a video. It's a video I watched on YouTube with a very clever journalist that works for the New York Times, or I don't know what. He's actually not affiliated with the New York Times, because New York Times is very anti-vaping. But this guy made a study in how, like a journalistic piece. It's not science. It's just a journalistic piece. And he realized that a lot of great scientists and a lot of great minds were smokers. Albert Einstein has his pipe. He couldn't live without his pipe. Niels Bohr, we wouldn't have the atomic bomb in understanding anything about atoms and how, all this very important information, because someone that is a smoker, and many other smokers that we had. And it seems that when you have a very messy brain as a scientist, somehow nicotine helps you to kind of clear out a little bit the ideas and to gain focus. And then having focus when you have thousands of complex equations in your mind might help you to maybe cancel down a little bit of those thoughts and actually be focused and actually have a clear picture of things. Obama, maybe, I think he smoked too, no?
Yes. John Lennon, the guy Hubble, like this Hubble space thing out in the fucking sky.
Hubble Space Telescope,
right? These John Lennon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I said a bad word.
Somebody said Obama. And
Obama smoked.
That made my skin crawl.
Yeah, there is a lot of snus users that they expose their babies just to nicotine, not to carbon monoxide. And so Sweden should supposed to be the stupidest country on earth. Is that right?
No.
It's not the most stupid country on earth?
Just brain damage.
Yeah, all Sweden supposed to have a lot of people with brain injuries and babies that are completely underdeveloped and very, very stupid people right now, you know. That.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not promoting this website, but I'm going to throw this up here. Okay. So this is the Smokers Association.
Okay, yeah.
And there's Edwin Hubble and Albert Einstein. Well, they're just going to show Edwin Hubble multiple times. Thomas Alva Edison.
Yeah.
Wow, there's a lot of like cookies and crap here.
Winston Churchill.
Yeah, Winston Churchill. What are you doing?
I didn't think of Edison.
Yeah, Edison. Well, you know, he smoked an elephant too. One of the things that he did was they electrocuted an elephant to discredit Tesla. DC versus AC. And they had an elephant, and Edison wanted to prove the deadliness of Tesla's current type, so he actually electrocuted an elephant. It's awful. There's actually video of this. Don't watch it. It's awful. But yes, there were. I mean, obviously, if you're looking at the Manhattan Project, half of those guys probably smoked, if not all of them. If you ever watch like file footage of NASA during the Apollo missions, like everybody in mission control had an ashtray right there at their desk, operating these very sensitive scientific instruments that if they messed up would kill the astronauts in space or send them floating off towards Mars or something. So yeah, there's no way to discredit that nicotine is a mental focus amplifier. It improves your mental focus.
Unless you have a tail.
Well, I mean,
I had mine removed. Mine was removed when I was born.
I mean, obviously, if you think about it, we showed the pictures of them, how they subjected those mice to how they deliver the nicotine infused vape into these rats. Is they put them in a tube that is just the size of the body of the damn rat, and then flooded it with emissions from a vaporizer. You can't tell what the parts per million. I mean, obviously, lungs on a rat are much smaller than lungs in a human. How are they calculating the size of the puff for a rat versus a human? Obviously, if they're designing their experiment with a human puff and they're exposing that to, bolus, we'll use a bolus. If they're exposing the rat to the same amount of aerosol, it's going to affect the rats in a completely different way than it would a human being.
These people haven't obviously.
And I've never read a study where they describe the methodology of that experiment.
No.
I mean, we found a picture of the rats in the tube, though.
Somewhere buried in the middle, it'll say in mice. Somewhere in the middle, they do declare usually what they're doing. But
they don't tell you the size of the of the actual volume of the puff that they're. I mean, they're literally pouring e-liquid on a coil and injecting that into the tube, and they're not measuring that.
They take the safety off.
They're not making some sort of baseline and saying, well, this is the percentage of lung expansion in humans, so we need to give the rat or mouse the same percentage of lung expansion for a breath. They don't do that.
And it takes 3 months for everybody else to figure out what exactly it was they did to discredit it. And on the nicotine side, they obviously haven't talked to Dr. Farsalinos or Dr. Gardner or Eliana is another example. So there you go.
Yeah, and obviously when we talk about the zebrafish study from Canada last 2 weeks ago or whatever, I think they're just pouring 100 milligram per milliliter pure nicotine into the water and watching the fish float.
Probably.
Yeah, and you need to remember that the exposure that you have in an environment where you have cubic meters of air and you extremely diluted, exposition, because when a puff, and that's explained in my study, by the way, in the study that is being just published. When every time you vape, like a device like this one or like other devices, I think I have another one. When you guys vape, approximately like each vape weights as per weight, approximately, I would say 1 milligram. I would say 2 or maybe 5 milligrams if you are vaping in high intensity vapes. And that those 5 milligrams have maybe a percentage of it which is nicotine. It would be micrograms. So it would be approximately 200 to 300 micrograms of nicotine. And you're doing that only 170 times a day, I would say, on average. Now, put the situation when you are actually making a fish to be completely soaked with nicotine. So you are losing the proportion. You cannot make that. And you need to understand also the biology of that fish is completely different. Okay, nicotine is ecotoxic, but the difference with nicotine of ecotoxicity is that it doesn't bioaccumulate. So even though nicotine is toxic, it's acutely toxic. It's not something that accumulates in the environment. So once it degrades.
Say that again. It is not biologically accumulative?
Bioaccumulative.
Bioaccumulative. Okay.
Okay, so what different to like other toxic substances like DDTs, which actually stay in the environment for a really long time, and they get on fat tissue, on whales or animals and things. Nicotine has not, because nicotine is not lipo or soluble. Nicotine is actually a water-loving substance. Once it degrades, it goes forever. It doesn't stay in the environment, wanging around for years and years. Nicotine got destroyed. But yes, nicotine is ecotoxic in pure concentration. When we're speaking about nicotine as 1,000 milligrams per ml, nicotine is very, very, very ecotoxic. Yeah.
So a follow-up question is there's a talking point that has come up in multiple hearings in regards to multi family households and what they call second-hand, third-hand, and fourth-hand exposure. Fourth-hand exposure they describe as one resident of an apartment vapes inside of that apartment and then leaves, and months later they test the walls for the next occupant, and they find toxicants on the hard surfaces of those dwellings. So you're saying that it breaks down over time. What is the half-life of nicotine on a hard surface?
Yeah, so I got a card from Japan. And I didn't know that, but it's maybe life. I would say this is just ironic. My car was owned by a Japanese that was a smoker.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in New Zealand, a lot of secondhand cars come from Japan, and in my car had stains, which I would call third-hand smoking exposure to myself, because you can see the stains on the edges of my car. So I have a Prius, and I can see all the stains on my car of that smoker. And I definitely can tell that those stains are of smoke. So I'm very, 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 very curious, because I'm a chemist and I have ways to calculate nicotine, and even ways to calculate substances of the degradation of that nicotine, such as cotinidine and things like that. I took a small piece of that plastic that I have in my car. I took a small piece and I analyzed what I can find from there. No nicotine, no cotinidine. So if it's second-hand exposure, whatever it is, maybe they have some aromatic compounds, which are obviously carcinogenic and toxic, which they are present in those solid particles that deposition in those surfaces that you can actually smell on someone's smokes, or even in the walls of a smoker, or that yellow stain sort of thing. And yeah, I couldn't measure a single, and I was actually able to identify micrograms of nicotine at that level on a per ml. So it's actually a very sensitive unit I have here to analyze nicotine. I couldn't see anything. Yeah.
I'm gonna use the word dispel. I don't use it often enough. The word you used was proper. You said there were smoke stains. Tobacco control experts use nicotine stains on occasion, not a lot, but it pisses me off so bad every time I see it, because nicotine is not brown. Smoke is brown. So there you go. Be quiet, Patrick.
It will oxidize over time, and it does darken.
Yes, you're right. How much nicotine did she get? 0, right?
Yeah. So, and guess what? I have a molecule of nicotine behind me. Oh, here. Sorry, here. Okay.
It's right. I'm pointing right there. I see it.
Oh, actually, I have one here. So this molecule of nicotine, actually, this is easier. When this molecule, it needs to be processed by the environment, or even in our bodies, you transform this molecule into something we call nicotinic acid. Okay. So nicotinic acid is pretty much like this molecule breaking in two. And nicotinic acid actually you can make vitamin B3 out of it. Okay.
Nobody wants to talk about vitamin B3.
Yeah. So, which is not necessarily that different. But I mean, it's intermolecularly speaking, I don't really understand that process of conversion into something from something to something. But nicotinamide, the name nicotine, it doesn't mean it comes from nicotine. Okay, it doesn't mean that nicotinamide comes from nicotine, but it has a structure that is similar, and actually a product that comes out of like this part. So let me just show you something. So what actually happened, and actually this is real data that you guys can find out. This is nicotine. Okay, so I'm just gonna double check if you guys have seen. So this is nicotine. In our bodies, is being oxidized by intermolecular mechanisms. What happens is this part is split in two. And now this part here is the very famous niacin, which is actually vitamin B3. Just go check. I mean, obviously you need to oxidize this part, this end here. It becomes a carboxylic acid. So it becomes, and our body does that. So our body oxidizes this carbon here. This carbon oxidizes and makes an organic acid, which is a carboxylic acid, which is a COOH. And then from nicotine, you actually have vitamin B3. Isn't that nice? Isn't that
see, that just makes me want to vape more now. I need some more B3.
So I have a question.
This is not what I wanted you to do, but I just trying to explain to you, if this single process that happens in our bodies happens also in the environment, makes something which is a precursor of vitamin B3, why we need to be so scared of it? Okay.
So
and this substance is this is a pyrrolic ring. So this substance actually becomes like that. And this is something our body knows how to handle very well. You can make urea from this side here. This one becomes in urea, which is something that we pee.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just not very different from a molecule that we deal with that every time when we drink, which is ethanol. This can be oxidized to ethanol. And we know how to deal with vodka. So yeah.
I love ethanol.
I have a question. If I open a restaurant, Italian restaurant, and I boil and peel and brew potatoes and tomatoes and any other nightshade plant,
eggplant,
will there be nicotine on the walls of some sort, or would it be niacin?
There is a half-life. You were saying there is half-life, so maybe after a week or two, maybe I will still find some traces of nicotine. But I will be very lucky if I find after maybe 2 or 3 weeks any nicotine.
Right.
Maybe I will find vitamin B3.
Aha! They didn't. Well, anyway.
Of course, there's oxidation on the walls. So
it's not
that carbon that carbon element will oxidize pretty quickly. In that environment, so you could have niacin or B3 on the walls. Pretty easy, I would say, pretty quickly. I'm not a scientist. I just play one on Facebook, but that's something I never expected to have. We have turned this show into a very educational program.
Yeah. And you guys saw, I'm not playing with your minds, and I'm just showing you, this is a molecule of nicotine, and I broke it down in front of your eyes. You guys can go into internet right now and see how niacin, the structure of niacin, is called nicotinic acid for something.
Right.
These names are not, we don't make these names up. Obviously, niacin might not do anything to these nicotinic acetylcholine receptors that we use, that pretty much are like the ones that are involved in all this kind of key chain reaction when you put this inside your body. But yeah, I mean, definitely it is important to picture things chemically in our minds a little bit more simply as like having an actual molecule and breaking it down in front of everyone's eyes.
And it wouldn't benefit you the same way necessarily because of the delivery method as well, because one is food, obviously, and one is going into your lungs. So that takes another turn too.
And there is 3 different ways on the toxicity comes. When you speak about toxicity, you have 3 ways to speaking about toxicity, which is oral toxicity, inhaled toxicity, dermal toxicity. Okay, so inhaled toxicity is actually the one that you need to keep more control of, like the more sensitive, because it's the most intimate level of toxicity. Right. Oral toxicity is the one that when you put rats and you count LD50s. With toxicity inhaled is LC50. With oral toxicity, you speak about LD50s. And for dermal toxicity, you still use LD, but you speak also on areas. So square centimeters of skin, or you speak on that language. And that's why cosmetics, we kind of put anything we want on our skin, because this is such a hard to cross barrier that it's kind of insane that somebody's saying that the 3rd or 4th exposure, smoke exposure, whatever, to nicotine through skin is going to make me smarter.
You're pretty smart already. So if something makes you smarter, the rest of the world better be worried. Speaking of that, though, during the second Senate hearing in Australia, the Senate Select Committee on Tobacco Harm Reduction, they had they had scientists on, they had Clive Bates on, they had a lot of senators opinionating. And one of the things during the live stream that was on Pippa Live, because Pippa got permission from the government to restream it, which was the responsible thing to do. you were in the chat room, and one of the things that I saw you type that vaping saved your mom's life, which got my attention, and I had already seen you give a presentation at the Global Forum on nicotine, blah blah blah, just a month or so ago. But one of the things that sort of got my attention was you pointed out something that I hadn't even considered or thought about was, why didn't they invite me? I'm a pharmacist, and they don't have a single pharmacist in any of these hearings. So yeah, that sort of got my attention. And I said, well, you could come on my show and talk about the Australian proposal for a prescription model, and how it would or would not be successful because they didn't invite you. So I'm giving you the opportunity to address what you feel is for, or the benefits of, or the failure of having nicotine be under the control of pharmacists in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, we have a problem that is killing slowly 3 million Australians, and as we speak, 1 Australian is dying right now. Actually, 20,000 Australians die each year. So during this show, maybe 5 or 10 or maybe 20 Australians have died while we speak because of smoking. So when somebody wants to take a precautionary approach and wants to create such a complex environment for someone to access these products, and it's actually for someone that otherwise would be smoking, I just simply think that this is kind of draconian, and it's just painful, especially when I saw it in my mom. If somebody tells my mom, yeah, you can keep vaping, but get a prescription, get your nicotine exported from place B, and then from place B, get these and get customs questioning, you showing your prescription, go to a pharmacist, get a pharmacist to order that online, and all these gymnastics for you to get your vape. And it's something that is saving my mom. It is frustrating, especially when I wouldn't do this if maybe cigarettes would be prescription, and then I say, okay, at least there is symmetry, and let's keep that symmetry because, okay, at the end of the day, it's the same. But there is the asymmetry, which is so uncomfortable, because that same mom needs nicotine. Her brain works with nicotine. She's just not going to give up, even after having 2 heart attacks, COPD, and all those things. She's just not going to stop. She's like, I will die smoking. That's it. I don't care. She would simply say, you know what? I can't vape anymore. I just simply go back to my beloved cities. My loved ones. I had good times, bad times with them, but at the end of the day, they are the only thing that was always with me. So I will just simply say to them, why you want to create such a stringent method that will actually cause a lot of restrictions for smokers that can access those cigarettes everywhere. I will understand that you're following that approach, let's say for heroin, and then you want heroin to be given in a pharmacy, and that happens here in New Zealand. Methadone is given in a pharmacy, but you don't sell heroin injections in a gas station. You don't sell heroin injections in this kind of environments. It's not that easy to get heroin. You can get it on the street, but it's not that easy. It's a bit of a hassle, and it's quite difficult to access it. So that's pretty much what makes me so uncomfortable. And yes, there are concerns about quality. There are concerns about to make sure things are effective, efficacy. Okay, yes, those are genuine concerns, but never forget the elephant in the room. It's actually such a big elephant that I don't think people can even breathe in that room, because it's such a huge elephant. It's the number one preventable cause of death in Australia. So when you are taking a precautionary approach, when you're like, no, we just don't know enough, I just tell them, shut up, because that just I don't know is killing people right now. Right now, there are many Australians dying as you speak. So when you take that cautionary approach, is killing people.
Eliana, you're a beautiful human.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously, the product, so in Australia, they classify nicotine as a poison. Now, the number one delivery method in the world for nicotine is smoking.
You can get those without a prescription, right?
You can get
Cigarettes?
those without a prescription.
Okay.
You can get those.
Just
You
checking.
can get those on every convenience store, package store, grocery store, whatever they call them in Australia and New Zealand.
I think we call them dairies. We call them dairies.
Yeah, you can get them. You can get them literally almost everywhere. But the one thing, the other alternative method, or one of the other alternative methods for nicotine delivery that seems to be pretty well accepted in a lot of places in the world as a good way to quit smoking, you actually have to go to a doctor, one of the 9 or 10 in the entire country of Australia that is currently writing prescriptions for nicotine, vaping nicotine, pay the consultation fee or whatever that is, then find a pharmacist who's willing to dispense that.
Import
it and dispense it, and
500 miles from home,
and compound it, probably add it to already existing 0 milligram product. So so Bruni says there's only 8 doctors out of 10 that were writing these prescriptions. So it seems to me that they wouldn't even consider putting cigarettes on a prescription model, which really that's the one thing you probably need to have a prescription for, because we know it's going to kill you, or at least negatively impact 50% of the people that use it.
Yeah, but I want to stop you there, because if I have a mental condition, Alzheimer's, or one of those unique mental conditions in which actually people with that mental condition find nicotine incredibly important and actually life definitive. It's something that person cannot have a life if they don't have nicotine. If you're a person like that, and nicotine patches and gums don't do much for what actually your needs, what you actually need. If you stop cigarettes from being available for those persons that will never go to a doctor because there is a lot of there is a stigma on people with mental conditions, and you will find a lot of people with mental health conditions indeed benefit from nicotine. But if you cannot access vaping, and your life is such a misery that you actually, a lot of people are suicidal and all that stuff, that the only thing that can help you kind of cope with life is nicotine as a way of smoke. For God's sake, at least let that person take nicotine in that horrendous and dirty way, but at least, for God's sake, for that human life that is suffering, that finds pleasure in nicotine, finds life meaningful because of nicotine, at least give it there. Because if you put that on a prescription and you ban vaping, because that could happen, it's kind of like incremental changes in the negative side, that poor smoker is just either gonna bring it from the black markets, or I don't know what's gonna happen, but it's not gonna be good. And we need to have a sensitive eye with those who are suffering the most, and those who need nicotine the most, which you will find this happens everywhere in the world. They tend to be persons that have unique and particular mental health conditions.
Well, yeah. So I mean, during the first hearing, the young lady that's the chairperson, and her name is just totally flew out of my head, but she admitted that Dr. Colin Mendelsohn was her doctor for writing for helping her become a non-smoker. And that he had sat down with her during the consultation. He gave her, he had different hardware and different liquids for her to try.
Holly something?
Holly, yes. Holly Hughes. Is that right? Holly Hughes?
Yeah, Holly Hughes.
Yeah. So the thing about that is that Colin is knowledgeable about vaping. He has he is aware enough to know that flavors are important to people. that delivery, different methods of delivery. I mean, even in, something like this versus something like this versus, something like this, each person has different preferences and needs to have a tailor-made approach specifically for them and what is going to satisfy them to keep them from smoking. Not a lot of GPs are going to dedicate that much time to research this, to actually have samples of different varying products in their office so that they can consult with you about these products. Obviously, when you go to the pharmacist and a regular commercial pharmacy, the pharmacist is not going to go through this process. So vape shops where people can sit down with you and talk to you about your smoking life and what products might help you better, that's going to go away.
Yeah, and I work in a pharmacy here in New Zealand, and I don't have the time. I'm really very honest with you. We yes, different to doctors, we have to spend some time with customers because we see them as they are patients, but they're customers. They're actually paying us for selling our products. Prescriptions in New Zealand are pretty much free, but I have to have some time with my patients. But as a pharmacist, I will not be able to learn this complex world of vaping. Right now, I think you guys know more about vaping than what I know, because it's such a complex and unique world that it's just complex. If we pharmacists, we don't have time. We have to deal with more complex things. Nicotine is not a concern for us. We have to deal with complex molecule substances that they're actually dangerous, and we need to teach the patients how to use. Clozapine is a substance that can be easily toxic if the patient is not following the levels. We need to do clozapine checks. Warfarin can become toxic if the patient drinks grapefruit juice and things like that. We have such a complexity of a world that is so complex that please don't bring that complexity of vaping in our pharmacies. We can't handle that complexity. It's enough. And our pharmacists sometimes don't even have time to make a customer facing because we are behind in our customer box, put packing pills, making sure there is no medical interactions, making sure the government is going to pay this, making sure that we are writing the label, making sure that we don't put the wrong pills in the wrong box for the wrong patient, and all those things. We don't have time to dedicate that to a patient that actually requires at least 20 or 1 hour of time. So he or she, they understand what vaping is all about.
That is what should have been in this testimony. That is exactly why you're here. That's stunning. I don't even understand how you can be a pharmacist because it's well beyond my realm of thought. So my wife had a interaction with a over-the-counter headache medicine, Advil, because of something she was on for something else, and she took it allegedly. The second time she took it, she had the reaction. She almost died right on the floor, 5 feet over from me. And the doctor said, not the pharmacist, the doctor said the second time you take something, if you're allergic to it or if it's an interaction with another drug, it's usually the second time you take it that you'll know. You won't know the first time. And I was like, I'm 52 years old. I've never heard this before in my life. So the knowledge you have and the statement you just made should have been played or listened to or read by everybody making the decision to put it in a pharmacy. Period.
Yeah, and not just that.
Wow.
The people who are taking that decision, the TGA, it's a body made out of pharmacists and pharmacologists and people in the world of pharmacy, okay? Because we are the ones that can tell the world how substances should be regulated. And then when that body decides that nicotine should be regulated as we regulate other medicines, which is sometimes, we have these complex regulations for a reason, okay? We decided as pharmacists that we need to be stringent in this way. But when you lose the focus and you don't understand what is the big elephant in the room, and a lot of pharmacists can forget that big elephant in the room because they are just being told, regulate this as is a medicine. And for us, we have thousands of products that are regulated that way. So for us, it's like, okay, another one. But when we don't understand the implications of making that, the public health implications and the unintended consequences that has, that's when all the harm happens. And I'm happy to, as a pharmacist, make them aware of that harm. Okay?
Sure.
Because they might not be aware. They might actually think that, let's make this product as safe as possible. What's bad with that? And they might not be aware of the unintended consequences, because it's not something that every pharmacist knows. We are too busy, and we have to deal with such a complex and always changing environment that we just don't have time to learn about this. And if an association, the AMA, the Australian Medical Association, tell us vaping is bad, we're like, okay, I'm not going to argue with you. It doesn't make sense, but I agree with you. It's not good for you. Simple. Yeah.
So my train of thought, and I don't remember, I don't know if it was Sweden or where, they declared that nicotine is not to be prescribed because it doesn't cure anything specifically, and it doesn't give you medicinal. It's not medicinal, is what they said basically. Which, if it's a mental health issue, that does kind of become a medical issue, but it's not the same thing as prescribing dopamine or whatever it is you're gonna not dopamine, but all those drugs you guys play with,
No, I mean, nicotine can be a medicine, definitely. Right. It can be. Nobody's saying no. Yes, definitely. And we can even design an oral delivery of nicotine system that delivers nicotine in a way that actually follows a pattern. Maybe every 6 hours delivers such amount, and then you make another layer and you cover that, and then another every 6 hours. And you can do that. As pharmacists, we are very creative on delivery systems. We, as pharmacists, are not comfortable in using the long delivery system. We are not just comfortable with that way. Right. It's just us personally. We just prefer not
rightfully so. Rightfully so.
Because it's actually, because we understand the toxicology and things, and that it's just orally speaking is better. But when you breathe things, you don't have the first pass metabolism, what happens with liver and things like that, which would be convenient. There are some pharmacists I'm speaking with that they say how great it would be if we can micronize or inhale hormones for hormone replacement therapy for women. They struggle with the hormones, and they have this virus syndrome, which is a condition that is very hard to find the right amount of hormones needed because you self-titrate. You can actually end up potentially using a vaporizer that helps you to get the right amount that you need of whichever hormone you need to balance for as virus syndrome. Or for those who are dealing with, let's say, pain, and you want to provide with an opioid, and that person potentially is dying with cancer, and you've been prescribing that person with morphine, but that person either uses too much or too little. So too little, they have pain; too much, they knock themselves out, cannot do nothing. And vaping, potentially, if you find an adequate delivery system, would help that person to titrate the morphine needed so he can have a functional life. But no, because someone decided in the pharmaceutical world that the vaping delivery system is a system that we cannot investigate further. So it's not considered a pharmaceutical delivery system. It is if you think about asthma inhalers and you think about other products that are inhaled, because there is few products that we inhale. There are few active ingredients that are inhaled different to nicotine. Yes, they are, that they nothing to do with asthma, because that's how we, even for instance, for migraine, there is an inhaler that goes right into your lungs. Okay, so there is such a thing. There is such a thing. So MIG. I'm just telling you, giving you some inside info from the pharma world. Yes, such things exist. But what I'm trying to say is that it's not a delivery system that we feel comfortable with. That's why we started with nicotine chewing gum, and then we went to the patch, and then we went with spray, until we went to the inhaler. Actually, the inhaler is actually nicotine being inhaled onto your lungs. The nicotine inhalers of Nicorette is actually the closest to vaping the pharmacy world or the pharmaceutical world has gone. This is like the border of comfort they have. That's how comfortable they feel going. That's how far they want to go.
Right.
I have something to change the topic real quick because I was just going through the things that Kevin sent me earlier, and you had the nicotine molecule model, and I wanted to show you this, and you can tell me if this is accurate or not. So is that an accurate representation of nicotine?
Yes, it is. So it is. If you see my model, yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna actually show you. I'm gonna put it in the as that molecule is. So it is something like that. You see?
Yes.
This little stick under the nicotine is a methyl group, which is a carbon with 3 hydrogens, but we just put a stick as pharmacists. We don't put the hydrogens because we don't need them. Now the blue, these 2 blues here we have here, they are nitrogens. Now that hydrogen here, we need to highlight it, and we need to even make a bold kind of connector because there is 2 kinds of nicotine. We have the L nicotine and we have the right nicotine. The same way you have a right hand and a left hand, you have L nicotine and you have R nicotine. Okay, so these 2 molecules are different. In fact, R nicotine is not active. It will not do anything to you. Only the L version of nicotine is active.
So that's a friend of ours has a nicotine tattoo,
Which I do believe is a scientist, right?
Is Mark a scientist? I don't know.
I believe he is.
Oh,
I could be wrong.
I don't know. I don't know what his credentials are.
This is a serotonin.
Oh, no
at the end of the day, nicotine is not. Nicotine is just a key lock. Okay, when you have this receptor and nicotine comes in, it's like a key lock. You go inside, you move this, and what happens is that receptor moves. You move things, interconformational changes inside your cell. You activate things, and what happens is that after a few steps, you get dopamine release on your bloodstream.
And we like dopamine.
Let me ask you a question. Has that thing around your neck hurt you at all ever? Has it made you addicted? Is it? I'm scared for you to wear that.
I make it. My body makes it. I can't choose making it. My body makes it. My body makes receptors that are active to nicotine. They are called nicotinic acetylcholine receptors. So my body loves nicotine. Otherwise, why he would waste time making proteins that are designed for nicotine to activate? And they are being called nicotinic acetylcholine receptors. And they are in tomatoes and they are in eggplants. And
there is an entire system in the human body designed specifically to receive and process nicotine.
That's what that is, right?
And I'm not trying to advocate for the consumption of nicotine because I don't consume nicotine. I just consume nicotine from the eggplants and tomatoes, and things like that.
Well, certain people's levels from getting it from vegetable matter and vegetable sources is enough for them.
I'm going to make you cringe, Patrick. Ready?
Uh-oh.
I have been the guy on Twitter who has told people that they're feeding their babies nicotine in baby food. And boy, do they not like it.
Well, I mean, even and everybody, I know that everybody here has watched the film You Don't Know Nicotine. But those that haven't, and I'm going to bring up another point from the film, Aaron says to his wife, he says, I tell my wife, I believe this is at the very beginning of the film. He says, I tell my wife that we're growing nicotine in our garden, and she freaked out until I explained that nicotine is in bell peppers and is in, tomatoes and eggplants. But yes, I mean,
in a much lower form.
I'm going to just mention this, and this is data we have, and this is data that is actually already established science. Nobody is debating this. Cauliflower has 16.8 nanograms per gram of nicotine. Cauliflower has 3.8. Eggplant has 100 nanograms per gram. The potato peel has 4.8. Potato pulp as a potato, 15.3. Potatoes have 7.1. Green tomatoes have 42.8. Pureed tomato has 52. ripe tomatoes 4.3, ripe tomatoes in different varieties. And in general, tomatoes have from 10 nanograms to 50 nanograms per gram, which means that if you want to make a microgram of that nicotine, you need approximately 50 grams of that tomato. And trust me, tomatoes weigh around 200 to 300 grams. No, it could be like 100 to 200 grams. So yes, you are addicted to nicotine without even knowing it.
Every time you eat a BLT, not only are you addicting yourself to bacon, which is a superior meat product, and you're also getting nicotine from tomatoes.
It's not inhaled, so it's different, right?
Well, it hits the bloodstream differently, but I mean, obviously, your
it is
lungs,
in it.
The process of inhaling something into the bloodstream is more rapid in the lungs than it is in the stomach.
Right.
Yeah, and as I said, when you inhale a puff of vaping, that puff has approximately 0.2, it's actually from 0.1 to up to 2 or 5, and up to 200, because that depends pretty much on what you're vaping, up to 200 micrograms of nicotine. So it's definitely, if we're trying to have a sense of proportion, definitely vaping has many, many hundred times more nicotine per puff than what you get from a tomato. What I'm just trying to say is that
it is there, though.
It's natural, it's there, and it's not something artificially made. It's not something it's strange. It's not something that a body suddenly feels that it's not something artificial, you know. I mean, if I'm going to be very honest with you, I think PG is more artificial. If you think about it, but obviously our body knows very well how to handle it. But PG is not naturally found on things, you know. Which PG, I have it here, which is this kind of like side carbon is not necessarily very, very kind of like natural. That's why when we need to do modifications, we actually get PG from other sources.
Did you make that chart behind you for us?
No, I keep it always. I have so many different boards.
I've seen that whiteboard before.
So that means you do data research and science a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I have another one here which has a lot of intellectual property, so I cannot show it because otherwise.
Yeah.
I have a lot of things around me. I just cannot move my computer very well.
We forgive you.
Are you at work or are you at home?
No, this is my place of work because I needed to be here today. That's why I found convenient, because otherwise at home I don't have all my
I was just worried that your home life was also surrounded by nicotine. If that was your house, you would have whiteboards in your living room. Then I was gonna tell you not to take your work home with you, but
this has been a stunning show thus far.
So she just showed us a mortar and pestle.
Yes.
Which you know, you would think in a high tech lab environment you wouldn't have to mortar and pestle stuff.
We're in one right now. We're doing science, data, and research.
We are.
You need to do research and development. You cannot run a small batch of something. And I'm actually working on nicotine salts. I'm making my own nicotine salts. And nicotine, when it's pure, is actually liquid. But nicotine salts are actually powders.
Right.
And I need those. Sometimes I need to macerate those powders very well before I actually play with them a little bit, because my intention is in the future, if snus is legalized in New Zealand, to make snus with not snus, actually nicotine pouches made out of my nicotine salt. Which is, in New Zealand we make illegal the consumption of nicotine pouches and snus. That's our flow.
In New Zealand, where are the traditional NRTs placed in the store?
Everywhere.
But it's addictive. What about the children?
Yeah, no, we don't care about our children.
Oh.
So
that's it. I'm done.
That's why we legalize vaping. We don't care about children.
They have patches and gums and like a spray nicotine in New Zealand.
Yes, all of those things. And also, guess what? In Australia, also, you can buy these things in a gas station if you want. You can buy them in a supermarket. Yes, you can buy nicotine in all forms and shapes in Australia without. You don't need to go to a pharmacy.
But they're poisons. They're on a list of poisons
it's a poison when it's in a vape. I mean, if you take this out and then suddenly, I don't know, you maybe spray it, then it's okay. Okay. This thing is what makes it a poison, okay?
So I can take this and put it on a piece of paper and then put it on my arm and I'll be fine.
Exactly.
But if I think, okay, good.
Yeah, you get the logic. Yeah, that's Australia's logic. Yeah.
Now Chugga says that 12-year-olds can have patches in New Zealand.
That's right.
And she was on a few weeks ago.
Yes, Chugga was on the show as well.
So what happens is that with science and nicotine, every time you use the word nicotine, immediately everybody do like in this world, because it's kind of like
no. You can use the word nicotine as long as you market that product by a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah. No, what I'm trying to say is that in the science world, when you mention that world, they don't want you to speak positively about it.
Yep.
Okay. And so that's what causes this limitation. But people that have Tourette syndrome and people that have compulsive obsessive behaviors can benefit from nicotine. Okay. The problem is that data is kind of like data that is sitting down in some scientific databases, and nobody really wants to do much with that. But I have a husband that has Tourette's, and he just doesn't like the concept of nicotine. I cannot convince him. And he has Tourette's, and I told him you can use the nicotine in a patch form, and he doesn't want to. I'm not going to force him, but his Tourette's sometimes are a little bit out of control, and the nicotine would definitely help him. He doesn't want to, and I'm not going to force him. He's a human being that can decide what he wants for himself.
Did he see You Don't Know Nicotine?
Oh, I don't think he will be very interested in it. So.
Because there's,
there's a section he may.
there's a Tourette section in there.
Okay, I will show it to him. But I have, believe it or not, and this is just the irony of being a scientist, I'm married to a person that distrusts science.
Hey, I work in healthcare and I distrust doctors.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
You're a pharmacist. Have you ever prescribed anything to stop nicotine addiction?
So in New Zealand, we technically speaking don't prescribe. We sell things, and there are a few products that we are allowed to give, which only a pharmacist can give. There's a few products that are considered pharmacists only. But yeah, I mean, I've done that many times in the past. In New Zealand, you can find vaping devices in pharmacies too. So and I'm happy about that. I mean, as widely available, you can make vaping perfect, as long as you don't just restrict it to a pharmacy. So yes, in New Zealand, you can find vaping devices sitting next to NRTs, and so you have the whole option, all the ways. And yeah, I mean, you will find a lot of pharmacies a little bit hesitant in offering vaping, but it is there. And if somebody comes and asks, "Hey, I want to try vaping," go for it. We are not obligated into stopping someone from taking that product. Right. No, we have the obligation as pharmacists that every product that has written on top pharmacy medicine or pharmacists only, as a pharmacist, we have the obligation to decide whether a person can use it or not. We can stop that product from being sold because we control that sale. Okay, but that's maximum. But that's not happening with vaping. Vaping is there. The only thing we need to verify is age, and that's it.
So there's a heated discussion in the chat room right now between Paul, Chugga, and Nancy in regards to what it is that you're drinking.
Oh, I'm drinking something called Bundaberg, which is ginger beer, which is an Australian drink. Alcohol free. So no, it's alcohol free. Even though it says beer, it's alcohol free. It's just a sweet drink.
Because one of them thought that it was Bundaberg, and one of them thought that Bundaberg was a rum, and somebody else said no, it's a soda, and that they also make an epic blood orange drink, Bundaberg. So I guess you need to look for the epic blood orange version of that drink and try it.
Okay, I'm gonna give it a try. Thank you so much. I don't know where that chat conversation is happening, but
there's actually a tab on the right hand side of the screen of this actual screen that says live chat.
Oh,
and you can see all of the comments from all of the people.
Okay, after 2 hours and 11 minutes, you just tell me that.
I may have messed up as a host and told you that it was there.
You suck, Paul.
Paul does suck.
Oh my God, Yolande. Oh my God. This is all my tribe, my New Zealand tribe. Nancy, Yolande, maybe Tom.
There's a few.
There's a few Kiwis and a few Aussies in there.
Yeah.
As well as a few Americans.
Yeah. In New Zealand, the world of nicotine, we are like a huge family, even though we are very, 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 we are a very small country, very isolated. We are a family in the sense of like, we know what everyone is doing and we celebrate everyone's successes and we cry with everyone when somebody is being mistreated and stuff. So yeah, so we are all that family. So it's good to know that
I want to be an honorary Kiwi.
You're welcome.
I want to be an honorary Kiwi and an honorary Aussie so that I can come to hearings in Australia. I would have loved to participate in the hearing in Australia. But I submitted a comment and they didn't invite me. And my comment is still not posted. So
is that Vaping? Is that Vaping?
No, that was in the Australia in the Aussie hearings. So hey, Hennage is in the chat room as well.
Oh, yeah.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah.
He says they make rum and soda. So yeah, he says it's very clever marketing. You get the kids hooked on the sodas and then get them when they turn adults.
Yeah, sugar is addictive as well. And if we consider that concept of addiction that we were talking before about the addiction, addictivity, and about us actually dependence, and that dependence is words and it's how you use those words. Sugar is actually very people make themselves very dependent on sugar because sugar is not natural in the way we are using it right now. Because in the past, I would say 100 years ago, we didn't get to have this very purified version of sugar.
Yeah, refined sugar is not real.
No, it is not real. No, it is not.
And there's nicotine in tea as well, by the way.
Oh, that's
So everybody knows. Everybody that's drinking tea.
So I get caffeine and nicotine in the same beverage?
Yeah, damn right.
No wonder those Europeans, those UKers and all of the colonies that come off of the UK are all addicted to tea.
I'm looking directly at Norbert Zillatron. That's who I'm talking about.
and also theobromine, which is also found on chocolate, which is a molecule that is very similar to caffeine, and it's also very similar to which is also a substance that is a stimulant, and it also can be, biochemically speaking, if you are using a modular reference in which nicotine is considered that addictive substance, it's also very addictive. Caffeine is very addictive. If you remove caffeine from the supermarkets, you will have nation completely.
Oh, you would not want to see me without my coffee.
You will see a broke nation. You will see.
There will be a violent revolution. What are you talking about?
In Starbucks,
worse than COVID-19. I'm telling you, worse than COVID-19. You will have a whole country complete. Yeah, you will see the apocalypse just for not having coffee.
Starbucks. There's an article I share quite a bit. Starbucks has over 8,000 combinations of flavors, 8,000 combinations of caffeine, and they market them to children. You know that.
Yeah.
They had that little cartoon character on the side of the cup.
Yeah. With the moon.
So we've broken all of the barriers tonight. We actually did science right on the show, which we've never done before.
We did a chemical reaction to show how nicotine becomes in nicotinic acid, which is vitamin B3.
What is that called?
Niacin.
No, I mean, is it something I can order? Is it just?
Yeah. So this is our Lego for chemist. So
Okay,
I built a molecule, and this is a 3-dimensional molecule. Molecules are actually look like that. They don't look flat like.
Right.
They exist on 3 dimensions.
Exactly. So this is a molecule of nicotine, and you just need to organic chemistry,
like a kit
or something. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you can build all these beautiful things.
Oh, Kevin's we got to crowdfund Kevin being able to buy the molecular modeling kit so that he can have a nicotine molecule to hold up during the show when he's flashing his cards now.
I'm going to make it into a big necklace.
This is how you make vitamin D3. There you go.
She just made D3 again. She just performed science again.
This is all at no extra cost, by the way, to the viewers.
Yes.
I mean,
we should be doing this as a webinar.
This is crazy.
Where everybody has to pay $5 to get in. I got an invitation from Facebook that they will allow me to monetize and to have private events where people have to pay and buy a ticket to come in. I think we should do something like that, a special show. And we'll have Eliana on, and she'll perform more science for us.
Man.
She'll be like the Mr. Wizard or the Mrs. Wizard of the vaping world. For those of us that are old enough to remember Mr. Wizard. That was a science show that was on when we were kids.
Mrs. Nicotine or something like that. Or
we'll make it.
We have in Australia someone called Vaporman. You know,
yes, I know him.
And then let's make myself a Vsauce or something like that, but version of food.
We'll have to get her like a shirt with an emblem on it.
Oh yeah.
With the nicotine model on it, that'll be her superhero symbol.
Yeah, this is the kids. This is how they come.
Gotcha. See, Kevin's getting all excited now.
Sweet.
Yeah, so these are oxygens, the red ones, and these ones are phosphorus.
Oh, now I got to know all what they mean. Oh,
well, of course. Well, we're actually at the 2 hour and almost 20-minute mark. One of the things that we do before we end the show, Eliana, is we give the guests and everybody time to just speak about what it is that they want. Anything you want to talk about as your final thoughts.
Yeah, I'm ready for this. And I'm speaking to scientists, and this is speaking to all science in general. And it might be related to nicotine and vaping, but this is a general thought. And that sometimes the idea of building science is because we want to learn. We want to learn about the world that we live in, but also we use science as a way to understand how we are impacted by our own decisions. But that science often with that science, people make decisions in our lives and things like that. So science needs to be unbiased as possible, because science affects us all in one way or another. You don't need to be a scientist to be affected by the work of science. Sometimes science has issues in the way of it ignores communities that get disproportionately more affected by different outcomes. I just spoke about mental health being one of those outcomes that haven't been studied, and how painful it is for those suffering from those conditions that can be in which nicotine can be a benefit, just being ignored and being left there to suffer when there is a substance that has been existing since we know at least 8,000 years. and we are not helping with that substance just because we are not bringing that substance to that person who needs it in a form of a patch, at least, to make that life of that person less miserable. The same happened for other communities that are affected in different ways because, socially speaking, they are dealing with more stress than others. LGBTQI community, indigenous populations, minorities, migrants, refugees. Okay, and that's a touchy issue, but we need to think about how science is actually being also diverse enough to actually help us to bring everyone up at the same time, and not just to have this very Eurocentric, white-centric view of science, which only somehow appears to benefit those that are affected by the data that science gets out. But I actually wanted just to bring this out because nicotine, it is not just important for white European-looking Christians. No, science is important for pretty much everyone, and especially for those minorities, those people of color, those people that speak with a weird accent like me, those who are LGBTQI, those who are Black, everyone. They might need nicotine, maybe more, until we have a society that is a little bit better for all of us at the same time.
Kevin.
Man, there's about 100,000 things I could say. First of all, Anya, I've got three things to share on screen, Patrick. This one's the first one. Because you are brilliant and you're extremely smart, way above our pay grades, I want to show people that you're human by, I don't know if I can highlight, if that highlight shows up or not, but you're a pharmacist, a chemist, a scientist, and a human rights advocate. Human harm reduction is a human right on your profile. I don't know if you guys can see that part of it, but one of the things that I thought was great was you're talking to the WHO, the World Health Association, saying that they actively attack the green man, 68 million vapors, but ignore and condemn to death the red man and the photo that it shows, and they don't care. And we all know that. So that I appreciated. That goes away, Patrick, when I hit the button there. And then the second one, because I can't do this fast enough, of course, is is a statement you had made on a tweet. Nicotine is not the harm, even if people become established nicotine consumers. The harm is far gone when the smoke is gone. And that's a huge statement. It seems silly or contrived in a way to some, maybe, but it's not. That's extremely important. And the third point I wanted to make of you, other than thank you for coming on and talking to us little chuckleheads, is the final one, which was partially what brought Patrick to see where is it at? There it is. Dang it. There's that on there. This tweet touches me. I'm going to read it for the podcast folks. My mom smoked for 52 years. This is a photo of her in the 90s. Survived 2 heart attacks. She's now smoke-free thanks to vaping. She's 72, couldn't be healthier. Lung capacity increased twice in 6 months. That's science data and research, folks. And I bet you verified that. And oxygen levels up 91%, up from 87, I believe. I can't read it. She is not an anecdote, period. So I'll stop the screen there, Patrick. And I appreciate you so much for coming on. We have a lot of guests on that I really love and adore. And now you have become another one of them. And I'll shut up, Patrick.
I just love the fact, and Bruni mentions this in the chat room, that the show has evolved frequently. And this new format that we're doing the show in has been amazing, and it has allowed us to bring amazing guests. We've had a lot of great speakers in the last couple months. and I do have to correct him. Next week we're having Aaron Biebert on to talk about his film, and then the week after that we're having Bard Marius Malman from Norway on. So we already have the next 2 shows with amazing people already lined up. But since Kevin decided that we were going to show amazing tweets from you as part of our closing thoughts, I actually have another one to show. You're very, apologetic about your grammar and stuff. For one thing, you don't need to be, because most English speakers don't speak it properly anyway. But this is an amazing point that you're making. It's you say, let's accelerate tobacco harm reduction. It says, why to seat comfortably and do nothing, or use a restrictive precautionary approach when we can save every year from 1 million up to 3 million lives until 2060. And you have this wonderful image here, and I'm clicking on the wrong monitor because I'm so stupid. But you have estimated trends of tobacco-related deaths from 2020 to 2060. And if we allow tobacco harm reduction to do what it needs to do, and allow vaping to help people to quit smoking, this chart shows that about 3.5 million people will die from cigarette smoking, from, preventable disease. But if we don't do anything, and we allow the governments of the world to demonize and attack vaping, and to continue to steer people away from tobacco harm reduction in vaping, 6.5 million people will die. We can save 3 million lives, even if we just get them to accept that vaping is less harmful than smoking, and that people should be able to make those choices. Obviously, we don't want 3.5 million people to die, because that's 3.5 million preventable deaths from smoking that we could stop if everybody that smoked chose a less harmful alternative. So when we get amazing guests that have a science background, that have an advocacy background, or a policy making background, and we talk to them about vaping, it benefits us as the users of these products, and the people that fight for these products, to learn new stuff. You showed us stuff that Kevin and I would never have been able to absorb from anyone else that we've ever had on the show.
Or explain
it so that the 2 chuckleheads can understand it. Because surprising, we're not the brightest bulbs in the box, but we can still learn when the words are given to us in a layman's fashion. So we have to start new approaches. We have to start recruiting people from outside of our bubble. Obviously, you're part of the vape fam, even if you don't vape, because your mom is alive and will live longer because of vaping. And you know what? That made you, learn about vaping. And obviously, you're still willing to, you said it during the show, I probably don't know as much about vaping as you guys do, because we use the technology. But we're here to answer your questions, and you're there to answer our questions. So this type of dialogue is invaluable. Having somebody with a science background that understands how to speak to non-scientists is a tool that is very valuable to us. We can use you, and we're going to probably use you repeatedly between now and the time we win this battle, because I am still of the mind that we will win. You said something before that Fig, a friend of ours, often said when he was on the show with us frequently, was, we're on the right side of history. And ultimately, years from now, when we've won, we're going to be able to say, you know what? We were right, and we fought, and we eventually won. And that is ultimately a feather for our cap. That is ultimately a victory for us. And every victory has to be earned. So we're going to keep fighting. We're going to keep doing what we do. We're going to keep doing this show. We're going to keep going to hearings. We're going to keep submitting testimony when we have to. We're going to share our personal stories, and we're going to ask everyone else that has saved their lives through this technology to do that as well, to share your stories. You don't have to do all the hard stuff, but you can sit at your computer and type up your personal story and submit it to CASA, submit it to the Vaping Association in your country or your state. And we need to when we go to hearings, we need to print those stories out. When we go to meetings with our legislature, it could be a single senator. What we talked about with Charles last week is all we need to do is get one person in that hearing room to listen to us and walk into that hearing with an open mind and understanding the value of this product to their constituents. So if we put a human face on it, thank you, Nancy Lucas. Nancy says humanize it. We need to put a human face to this, and we need to put as many faces to this as we can. So when we go into a meeting with a politician and we bring in printed out testimonials from 17,000 users of these products, if that's 17,000 pages of paper, that's over 3 cases of paper. You put that on a dolly and you walk into an office and say, these are the words of the people that use these products in your district, or these are the people that use these products in your state or your country or whatever. Look at how important this is. We need those personal testimonials and stories. If Eliana's mother wrote on a piece of paper the value that this product has given to her, she said that she smoked anywhere between 30 and 60 cigarettes a day. That's a 3-pack a day smoker. And I don't know what cigarettes cost in New Zealand or wherever it is that Eliana's mama lives, but those are not cheap. I can guarantee you that they're not cheap today. A 3-pack a day smoker in Australia is what, $150 US or something like that? They're somewhere between $40 and $50 a pack or something. That is a lot of money saved from smoking. When people convert to vaping, that is incredible. And when you get the stories of that many people and you can carry them in and drop them on the politician's desk and say, this is the value of vaping. These are the personal stories of your constituents. We cannot lose if we start using different tactics. We've got to shock them. We can't protest at the White House every week. We need to figure out other things that we can do. And like Charles said last week during this week during our conversation with him, we need to look at other revolutionary ideas. How did these other people get the attention and make change happen?
Yeah, but we need change. We need change because
we can't keep doing. Yeah, we can't keep doing the same things.
Yeah, because what happens is that if we keep doing the same things in the same way, we cannot expect a different outcome. 3 million people will die. If I go back in the 100 years ago and somebody's going to tell me, look, Eliana, there's going to be a genocide in which maybe 2 million Armenians are going to die or 6 million Jews are going to die in the Holocaust. And they tell me, and I know, and I have the data to know that that's going to happen. What can we do to not let that happen, And right now we have the data. We know that we're going to have 3 million people dying quite soon. Why we are so comfortable sitting down and just kind of yes, I know that we're battling people with power and we have no power. And obviously they are right in the sense of they being right because they have the power. But we have to really find a more aggressive stance to make this this being known, because it's maybe not an aggressive way in a violence, but a little bit more creative in aggressive ways of communicating this knowledge.
Yeah, we're not promoting a violent revolution, but we are promoting shock tactics. We are promoting, more aggressive tactics. And you know what? I'm not waiting. I've said this before. I'm not a member of the industry. I'm not waiting for a trade association to tell me what to do. We need to start acting now. So yeah, we're going to win. It's going to take time, and we're going to keep fighting until we do. I appreciate and love everybody that has come and sat with us for 2.5 hours and listened to the great Eliana give us science. When we're done here in the show, I always tell you to go and kiss your kids or hug your kids and go find your wife and plant a big wet one on her, or your husband or your partner or whatever you want to call it. And just enjoy yourself for the next 2 days. You have the weekend. This is your time. But when Monday comes, just realize the battle is still here and we're still fighting. So you guys have a great weekend. Thank you, Eliana. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Bruni and Yolande and Nancy. And I'm just not going to call Yolande anymore. I'm just going to call her Chugga. And all of the rest of you that are in the chat room, David and Nancy and, everybody that's been commenting, and Leanna and Tom and Kath has been in Periscope the whole time. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming, Henage, and being in the chat room. And everybody else that's going to listen to the replay, thank you for your time, and just, keep on fighting, and have a good weekend. So, you know what? Thank you. Good night, guys. Good night, Kevin and Eliana. And we'll be back in 7 days with Aaron. And I'm sure that everybody has a lot of questions for Aaron about the film. So just get prepared, because we've got some great guests lined up and even more people on the horizon. So look at the nicotine molecule, and good night.
I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
We're exporting a whole lot of really bad and dangerous rhetoric, bad research, and unfortunately it's being picked up and amplified in other countries.
It's the same battle, Mr. Myers. We've been at it before. They want to addict these kids, this time to an e-cigarette, which has a chemical that's addictive. We know what it leads to. Sadly, it leads to tobacco addiction, disease, and death.
I'm going to get you addicted to nicotine. I have a customer for life. We have hundreds of cases nationwide where people have gotten sick or died using these devices.
Look what they're trying to do. All the delicious flavors of e-cigarettes are poison.
They're not people giving up smoking. They're not people that ever smoked before. Most people that vape never smoked before. Just think, if your kid was doing this and winds up with an IQ 10 or 15 points lower than he or she would have had for the rest of her life.
Most people who vape are current or former smokers. For the addicted adult smoker who switches, there's going to likely be a reduction in risk.
There's a tremendous push to bring about prohibition, to actually prohibit vaping. Whereas the evidence strongly suggests that actually, up to now, the most successful way of people stopping smoking cigarettes is vaping.
When vaping increases, smoking decreases.
That's right.
When vaping is restricted, smoking increases.
We're worried that, in fact, a lot of members of the public still think that using an e-cigarette is as harmful as smoking a cigarette. I mean, I have said that it would be tragic if smokers didn't quit and carried on smoking because they hadn't tried an e-cigarette, because they were worried about the safety of an e-cigarette.
The most disheartening thing is still the anti-choice rhetoric, the desire to enforce this quit or die mentality and refuse to allow individuals to reduce their risk unless they're willing to give up everything.
I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.